Alright, how many of you are eager and looking forward to going back in time to a time period that we know as the Burning Crusade? How many of you, and I actually would love if any of you who come across this video are perhaps people who were playing WoW during this time period, because I was not. I got into WoW very, very late. But I've heard stories from people who had played vanilla and then were around when Burning Crusade launched. And I've heard several, numerous different stories from various different people about what that experience was like, how big of a deal it was, what Burning Crusade was bringing to the table and adding and changing for the game. Some argue to this day that it made the game worse. And yet, I've also heard some people say that Burning Crusade was the best expansion that WoW has ever had. I've heard it from both sides. I've also heard that the launch experience for the expansion was insane. Absolutely insane. This is, of course, back when Blizzard was still really trying to learn how to do some of these things. They got much better at it as time went on. Heck, the very next expansion, Wrath, was evidence of this, when they're like, okay, rather than all of you go into one area, we're gonna make it two different areas. That way it's not as bad. And they just kind of branched, and expanded on that as time went on. But one of the big things about Burning Crusade was the addition of two races that was also going to be adding the two classes that used to be faction exclusive: Paladins and Shamans. In vanilla, it was a big deal for Paladins to be on the Alliance and could not be on the Horde. Now, I've heard that many thought that Shamans were really strong on the Horde, for one reason or another. But let's just say I've also heard that many people considered that the Alliance had it better off, because having Paladins, especially in raids, with all the different auras and buffs and such, was a huge asset when it came to raiding. Guys like Preach Gaming have talked about, he said that having multiple Paladins in a raid group in vanilla was the best thing ever. And the Horde couldn't match that with Shamans or anything. They had to rely on their priests when it came to stuff like healing and such. So needless to say, the Horde felt kind of jealous that Alliance had Paladins only. As far as I know, not many Alliance players were calling for Shamans to be on the Alliance. They weren't exactly, oh man, the Horde have it so good with all those Shamans. So the Draenei, which we will be doing after this one, being able to bring Shamans to the table for the Alliance, but also the Blood Elves getting added to the game. One, that was a big deal on its own because of what happened in Warcraft 3. Two, the fact that they were now bringing Paladins to the Horde was a big deal. I've heard Blood Elf Paladins in Burning Crusade were pretty strong. So, needless to say, being able to not only bring Blood Elves to the table, who were, of course, very integral to the story of Burning Crusade, as flawed and as wrong as it was written. That's a whole separate discussion. But that was, from what I've heard, a big deal. But again, if you're watching this and you have like personal experiences or stories from that time period of towards the end of vanilla to where Burning Crusade launched and how it was throughout Burning Crusade, feel free to share those stories in the comments. Feel free to share your experiences and stories from that time period if you participate in that in the comments. I would love to hear some of those different ones. I'm sure other people watching and in the comments would love to hear those as well. With that being said, let us delve into the Blood Elf Starter Zone.
The past few years have seen unprecedented changes within the eternal land of Quel'Thalas. The Blood Elves, following the will of their crazed leader Kael'thas Sunstrider, channeled dangerous, chaotic magics to transform their sacred Sunwell into a gateway of unspeakable evil. While Kael'thas and his demonic masters were eventually defeated, a different kind of transformation occurred within the Sunwell itself, as a dying Naru sacrificed its life essence to reignite the Sunwell into a fount of holy energy. Now, the Blood Elf regent Lorthamar Theron sees a new hope on the horizon for his people. Over time, the Sunwell's light could cure the Blood Elves of their cursed state. But many still cling to the arcane powers they've procured and are hesitant to relinquish them. As one of the remaining Blood Elves, you must fight to protect Quel'Thalas and help redeem the soul of your ancient people.
So I will say I kind of am a little happy seeing this many people making brand new Blood Elves. But then again, making, Blood Elves, I've noticed, have been one of the more popular Horde race choices amongst players. They just love the design and look of the Blood Elves. Of course, it's also led to a number of jokes and such over time. So obviously, the dialogue is, for the narrator, is a little more up to date with what was going on at that time, I guess involving either Wrath or Cataclysm. Since obviously it's referring to the events of the Sunwell patch at the end of Burning Crusade. But as far as I know, a lot of the questing in these two zones are not reflective of that dialogue. It's actually supposed to still be the questing that we did back when Burning Crusade launched, which has to do with a number of things, including what the Blood Elves were having to deal with at that time period, and also what Sylvanas was kind of forcing them to do. So let's talk about one of the big reasons why the Blood Elves getting added to the game, was a big deal. How many of you remember what happened in Warcraft 3 with Quel'Thalas? The Undead campaign. How many of you remember Tychondrius telling Death Knight Arthas, you need to go to the Sunwell in Quel'Thalas in order to use its powers to revive Kel'Thuzad? And basically the Scourge marched through. And when I say the Scourge, I don't mean a small little force. I mean a huge force of the Scourge marched through Quel'Thalas, the upper portion of the Eastern Kingdoms, straight to the Sunwell. And the proof of that is going to be outside of the city, but we'll get to that in a bit. So after the revival of Kel'Thuzad, Kael'thas had to basically destroy the Sunwell because it was now corrupted with the powers of the undead and the Scourge. It was not good, so he had to get rid of it. This is where then the problems of the Blood Elves. Now, they were not called the Blood Elves. They were, of course, called the Highborn or the High Elves. But they started to realize that they had been near their magical source for so long, they sort of became addicted to it. It was helping with their longevity and their lifespan and a number of other things. And as time went on, they started to feel different, being cut off from that source. This, of course, led to some of the other events that happened in Warcraft 3. And then we fast forward here to Burning Crusade. Now, as you heard, at the end of Burning Crusade, the Naaru, who planned to sacrifice himself to revive the Sunwell, to give them their source of power back, to be able to help them out, that was a big deal. Now, as of the time of Legion, we have now speculated that the Arkandor, if you have done the Suramar zone, could actually be able to possibly, if it was made for the Blood Elves, could actually possibly cure them of their need for magic from the Sunwell. Now, I personally think they could do that, and then they wouldn't necessarily need the Sunwell to just survive. They would just have the Sunwell just there, almost like as a landmark because when you think about it, much of their culture has had to do with the Sunwell. It's like it's a strong part of their history. So they may not be reliant on it, but they could still have it as a cultural landmark for their people, which is a big deal. And this is one of the big reasons why they renamed themselves to the Blood Elves, to honor all those elves who died trying to defend against the Scourge, including Sylvanas, which is a reason why the Blood Elves, who were, Lorthamar was trying to help them survive, was basically being having his arm twisted by Sylvanas to be forced to aid her because, well, she had one thing on her mind during this time, and that was prepping for the events that would eventually lead to Wrath of the Lich King, because all she wanted was revenge against Arthas. And she was wanting to force the Blood Elves to help her out in order to get her goal accomplished. So timeline-wise, when you're starting this character, as long as they haven't changed the quest, and as far as I know they haven't, this is before the Blood Elves actually join the Horde. This is when the Blood Elves are kind of trying to survive, or deal with things in order to survive. So that is, as long as they haven't changed things, that's what we're going to be dealing with in these zones. And this is going to involve 2 zones. This is the initial starter area, the Sunstrider Isle. This is then going to carry us over into Silvermoon over here, and then the Ebersong Woods, and then into the Ghostlands. So, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Hold on. So, of course, in order to help emphasize this point, I am playing a Paladin. 1, because I love playing Paladins. 2, because, as I said, the Blood Elves adding Paladins to the Horde was a big deal. So, and yes, I named her and modeled her after Lady Liadrin because she is awesome.
State your business.
The sooner you begin your education, Liadrix, the better for us all. There is little room for error, so listen closely. The burning crystals, the green floating objects to the west of the Sunspire here, have long been used to power the Isle's experimentations. The mana worms were in their guardians, but the scourge invasion of Quel'Thalas has driven them errant from our lack of magical control over them. There was little choice but to thin their numbers for reclamation. Do this, then return to me.
Be ready for anything.
Alright, so hold on, let me take a moment. Okay. So let's see. Let me see, which one of these is going to look better on her? That's not bad. Nah. That other one almost looks like as if she's part of the Scarlet Crusade. No, we are not doing that. Alright. Let's see. So, Vala. Nice. Let's see. Strength, armor, stamina, strength, armor, stamina. So it really doesn't matter. I do like the look of the Valor set, especially if you're playing as a paladin. Just works. The Might set is basically the set that Dranosh wore at the Wrathgate. A true silver champion. Alright. Okay. One more. There we go. As far as I know, I think that's everything. Alright. So you probably recognize the mana worms from the Burning Crusade cinematic, right? Hello. So yeah, this was also during a, supposed to be during a time when, depending on, well, obviously the idea was that you were going to be working on this character and then having to level through the rest of vanilla and then eventually get to the part where you could go to the Dark Portal to do the Burning Crusade stuff. Let me go ahead and move this. In fact, oh, and by the way, so when you create a Blood Elf, so let's go over some of the other stuff, the generic stuff. So you get Arcane Torrent, which removes one beneficial effect from all enemies within 8 yards and restores 1 holy power. I think that's a little different, the holy power part, because I'm playing a paladin compared to what it would be if I was playing a different class like a mage. Arcane Acuity increases critical strike chance by 1%. Enchanting skill is increased by 10, so if you want to pursue that profession, you could do that. This is why the idea of playing a Blood Elf Mage is a pretty good recommendation. And reduces arcane damage taken by 1%, kind of similar to what the gnomes have. So, and of course, some of the other stuff is really class dependent. So, again, I like seeing the amount of players that are running around here. But again, this is not very unusual considering that really, since they've come out, Blood Elves have been one of the most popular choices to make for Horde characters since they launched. I cannot tell you how much... oh, that reminds me. We have to get our chauffeur ready to drive us around. Okay. Go. Oh, there's a ton over here. Okay. I was concerned about taking some from other players, but now that I see there's a ton over here, I think we'll be fine.
It's too far away. I need to get closer.
Ding. So, I'm a little quiet right now. That's because I feel like I don't have much to talk about right now until we actually get, farther out to the rest of the starter zone. Because once we get outside and I can show you some of the other stuff, especially, considering what's going on, yeah, then we'll have more to talk about.
Have you?
You have successfully completed your first task. For that, you are to be congratulated. Such success gives me faith that you will turn out better than those young blood elves who failed to heed the lessons of their masters. Continued success will be rewarded, not only with knowledge, but also with tangible rewards as well. Your work here, however, is not finished. There is much more to learn, my young friend. Your effort has made something clear that, honestly, I wish were not true. The unchecked power of the burning crystals has maligned a much larger swath of the Isle's natural balance than I thought. We must now take on more unfortunate measures to reclaim control. The nearby lynxes have succumbed to the influence of the crystals, and they must be put down. Bring me their collars, as I may yet be able to fashion a magical restraint to turn some back from being uncontrolled.
Shorel Oran.
So, from what I've heard, this was something that some players immediately noticed. The difference in the questing design between this and vanilla. It just added, something else to this that made people go, oh, Some people, thought the questing was so much better that they just were all of a sudden having more fun doing it than they were before back in vanilla. Now, of course, once you leave this, you would have had to have been going back out into the rest of the area, like the Eastern Kingdoms, to basically quest in vanilla again. This, of course, obviously changed once Cataclysm came out, and they updated the old world to basically have the same kind of questing design that these zones were starting to have. I don't think the cubs are gonna drop those collars, are they? Nope, never mind, they do. Sorry, cubs. I don't want to, but I have to. Ooh. It's male. Oh well. For the time being, it can just kind of fill that slot. Oh, oh. Here's again one of those screen freezes that I've been dealing with lately. Sorry. I really hope they fix this. This has become more of a regular problem in this patch than I have had in months. I cannot recall, like, having this many screen freeze issues before until this patch came out. Now, of course, being a paladin, especially with other players around, it can cause a number of problems. Let me see if I can let this guy tag it. Yep, there we go. I purposely backed up to let him hit that so that way he could get credit for it. Because if I had killed it before his attack landed, only I would have gotten credit. See, this is just small little things that they started to do that I really, really like. The fact that you could be able to actually, you know, let players have the opportunity to join in and get credit as well as you. And it astounds me to this day the amount of people that apparently argue against this. Now their argument is, well, this meant that you had to group up and you had to socialize and all that. I mean, I mean that's somewhat true, but let's just say there were plenty of others that didn't do that. And I'm not talking about from the social MMO aspect. I'm talking about from the game design aspect.
Our enemies will fall.
It gives me no pleasure to ask you to destroy those beasts. While in times past we have lived in relative harmony with woodland creatures, these are different times. The first order of business for all Sindorai for survival is survival. Make sure that you remember that. This is a big theme throughout this because, as I said, remember, this is during a time when they still don't have the sun well, basically. I mean, they were sort of getting it back. But they're still basically just trying to survive. The Blood Elves' civilization and culture and city is in a very bad state in Burning Crusade, and it carries over. Even after they get the Sunwell at the end of Burning Crusade, they're still in a bad state because of what happened involving Kael'thas. You know, all that. And then Wrath comes around, and Sylvanas is like, hey, you're helping us. I don't care what condition you guys are in. You're still helping us. Like I said, strong-armed them into helping them, simply to satisfy her desire for revenge. No matter how horrible of a state and condition the Blood Elves were in at this time. The tower and surrounding areas should now be relatively secure, though only for the time being. You have done well in providing us with a buffer of security, but we will need to reassert control over the entire isle if we're to survive here in the long run. This will involve tackling much greater threats than errant mana worms and lynxes. Take this. You will no doubt make good use for it in the task to come. You are to report to my assistant, Lanathan Perilyn. He will instruct you on what needs to be done next. While we here at the Sunspire will continue to rein in the burning crystals, you will be focused on a more pressing matter concerning Fall 3 and Academy. Lanthan will explain fully when you speak to him. Simply walk west of here along the path, and you should see him standing close by. Good luck, Liadriniques. Your continued successes shall be rewarded.
We will have justice.
A few more quests popped up over here. So you can see in this initial starting area, there are supplies. There's a Pandar and a monk trainer. Let me go ahead and sell some of this stuff. Clear out my inventory. There we go. Alright.
Remember the Sunwell.
There's the trainers for the Warlock. The Blood Elves have a large selection of... Here's my trainer here. Doesn't look like he has a quest for me. But the Blood Elves, as you can see by the amount of trainers here, have a large selection of classes. This is one of the reasons why they're such a popular race choice, is because of the amount of choices that they have available when it comes to classes.
The dark times will pass.
The Spire held a beautiful vantage of the Sunwell. Once. Our lives here have been turned upside down, the Papaneeks, but we nonetheless carry on. It is our way. We are survivors. If you are to survive this upheaval, to carry on in your own right, then you must learn how to survive. All Blood Elves must do this. You must master your insatiable hungering for magic before it masters you. Day after day I stand here, watching, waiting. I've been accused of dwelling too much in our past, while my eyes look to the horizon, but it is my firm belief that each visitor to this island should honor those who have sacrificed all so that they may continue to do so. Dathramar Sunstrider was our first king. He led us here from Kalimdor through the Maelstrom. Seek out his shrine to the west, and do not return to me until you have read the plaque upon it in his honor. With all of the chaos happening here at the Sunspire, I haven't had a chance to collect my belongings. I've left outside at the various places on the Isle. I must maintain my vigil over the Sunwell here, so I'll ask you to collect them in my stead. I need my Scrying Orb, my Scroll of Scourge Magic. My Scroll of Scourge Magic, and my journal. Use this satchel for some extra space, as my things are rather bulky. Return them to me, and I'll give you something that you know for the effort. You can keep the satchel as well.
Shorel Aran.
Our enemies will fall.
It's a shame that we have lost control of many of the creatures here on the island. This was once a tranquil place of study and research. Now it's all we can do to keep from being attacked by our own creations. I'm going to offer you a chance to receive a magical boon in exchange for some collecting work on your part. Bring me a stack of arcane slivers that are found on the mana-using creatures of the Sunstrider Isle, and I will cast a spell on you that should aid your adventures on the Isle.
Remember the Sunwell.
I'll cast a spell on you.
Do not loiter.
Of course, you can go here. We got the extra bag right here, the Sunstrider book
To all who
satchel.
oppose us.
We will persevere.
If there is only one lesson that you deign to remember from your time on Sunstrider Isle, let it be this. Control your thirst for magic. It is a thirst unending, the Papaneeks. What you absorb must be controlled and released via arcane torrent. Failure is to become one of the wretched, hopelessly addicted and insane. Seek out a mana worm and unleash your arcane torrent upon it. Learn to master your power. When you have sufficiently released an arcane torrent, return to me, which is, of course, this right here, as I talked about. So I like this. I like that there is a quest here to literally try and help teach you what your special racial ability is. Okay, let's see. I guess we'll go report first before we continue with our questing.
Victory lies ahead.
Magistrix Aeona told me that you'd be along quick enough. The Falthrian Academy to our west, the huge floating building with ornate spires. It's the one that's blocked by that tree and you apparently can't see. I think it's someone over there. Is in bad shape. You're going to be leading the effort to recapture it from one of the wretched, a blood elf who has forever succumbed to their basest cravings. I hope you're ready to work. This is not only going to be a lesson about danger, but also of what happens when you forsake the realities of who you are. You notice the theme that they are really trying to hammer in here with these dialogues? This is what I was talking about, how the quests here are supposed to basically be the same as they were back when Burning Crusade came out, reflecting the time period that the Blood Elves were going through.
Shorel Aran.
Before sending you to the Academy, I want you on another task that needs to be dealt with immediately. Once used to aid us in the gardening of Sunstrider Isle, the bestial tenders now have grown out of our control. Clear them out with due haste, but be warned. Their lack of control has made them aggressive. It is such aggression that forces us to put down these once gentle servants. It doesn't please me to ask you to do such a task, but survival is survival. I will mourn later.
We will have justice.
Alright, so let's see. Go here and then just use Arcane Torrent on it. There we go. Okay, so I can get the Arcane Slivers from these.
I need to get closer.
Yep.
I'm out of range.
Or some players just kind of sitting here.
It's too far away.
Okay, that's all 6. There are the Feral Tenders. Here we go.
I'm out of range.
Yeah, I am...
I need a target.
You notice that the music is like very somber. Maybe that's not the right word to describe it. But to me, it's kind of reflecting that this area is still reeling and feeling the effects from what the Scourge did back in Reign of Chaos. That they still, to this day, have not recovered from that. Okay. Now find the regular tenders instead of the feral ones.
I don't have a target. It's too far away.
Okay. So I believe the plaque to read is right over here. By the way, yes, they have brooms just magically clean the place because, well, it's very clear how magically in tune the Blood Elves are. Not quite to the extent that the Nightborn are in Suramar, but kind of similar. But then again, this is why the Nightborn and the Blood Elves got along very well in Legion when we meet them. And why they eventually joined the Horde, because of the Blood Elves. I mean, Lord Thamar invites the Lysra here to see the Sunwell. He's very diplomatic with them. I can't read that? No? It just let me pick it up, but didn't let me read it. Well, that's a shame. I actually wanted to read that.
I need to get closer.
Well, maybe he'll, tell us what it says when we get there. Because he'll be like, did you read it? I'm like, no, the game didn't let me do it. He's like, what are you talking about? What do you think, this is some kind of game? This is a survival that we're talking about. And you think it's some kind of game? Let's see. Oh, wait, no, that wasn't it. Oh, the shrine is over there. Actually, let's go over here first. Let's get these belongings first, and then we'll go over and take a look at the shrine. There's the scrying orb. And then over here should be his journal. Ah! He just kind of left it there with all these manworms around and right at the base of this thing right here. Look at that! And he just left it here. Dude, how can you be so irresponsible with your journal? Alright, let's now head over to that shrine. The Shrine of Dathomar. By the way, I don't think I've actually clarified this yet, but this is also before the Blood Elves actually join the Horde. By the end of the starter zone here, which I include both Eversong Woods and the Ghostlands, by the time we are done with Ghostlands, that is basically when we go actually officially join the Horde. And that's supposed to basically be before the events of Burning Crusade, where the Blood Elves, these Blood Elves, that join the Horde, then join them in Outland. You have discovered the location of the shrine. Upon further examination, you sense a stronger pulse of the strange power that has gripped the isle. You feel a bit uncomfortable standing by the shrine, and perhaps a little disturbed. The bronze placard along the side of the shrine reads, "Here stands the Shrine of Dathomar, a fitting tribute to a noble elf. Let all who gaze on his monument remember his sacrifices for our people and his dedication to the cause of our continued survival. All who prosper and quell the loss do so thanks to him." So yeah, the Blood Elves are usually pretty big on honoring their heroes of the past. This is one of the big reasons why, despite the things that happen later on, Lorthamar still tries to not necessarily defend Sylvanas, but, you know, her basically having been a high elf with them and, you know, dying trying to defend them against the Scourge, earned her a lot of respect amongst the Blood Elves, despite some of the things that she does. It isn't until, obviously, the things happen later on in BFA that Lorthamar and the Blood Elves are like, okay, no more. Enough.
Yes.
While the deaths of the Tenders give me no joy whatsoever, it does show me that you are ready for the most important task that you will do here on Sunstrider Isle. Take this and put it to good use. You'll need good items and sharp wits for the task ahead. Our reassertion of control over the island depends on it. Doesn't really matter what I pick here. I'll pick the mace. A betrayer of our people resides atop Fal 3 Academy to the southwest. Falendrin is his name, and he was banished from Blood Elf lands for failing to heed the warnings of our teachers and elders. He is the worst of our society, as he lives only to feed his insatiable magical addictions. He refused to learn control. He is a shell of his former self, one of the wretched, and he is a threat to the Sunspire. Destroy him and the wraiths that he uses as minions. You can kind of see how this is kind of similar to what we end up dealing with when we head to Suramar in Legion and we encounter the Withered. And what happens when the Nightborn are actually cut off from the Nightwell. This is why the whole thing about the Arkandor made many of us go, oh, we could come up with one of these for the Blood Elves and save them.
We will persevere.
Splendid. These will do nicely. I've been doing quite a bit of thinking on the current Malay Sunstrider Isle suffers under. One possible course of action that I had pondered was to collect these arcane slivers from the beasts on the isle. In doing so, they could be experimented on. This would provide a potential source of culpability, Anyway, I will tend to the research. Allow me to place this incantation on you. I believe that you will make good use of it.
The reckoning is at hand.
And he gives us Fortitude of the Sindori, which increases stamina and versatility by 5 for 30 minutes.
Anaria Shola.
You have done well today, Papaneeks. Your willingness to learn shows that you may very well rise above the unyielding cravings that you must endure as a blood elf. Rest not on your laurels, young one, but instead seek to master what you have learned. Only through diligence will we as a race survive. Take this, it may be of some use to you. Go now and bring glory once more to our people.
Stay the course.
Right. So now I have Flash Heal. So now if things get rough, I can be able to heal myself. Let's go turn these in. And then we will cut off and continue the rest of, more of the starter zone later. This is not going to be like it was with the gnomes and the trolls, where I could be able to do it just in one video. The rest of these are going to take multiple parts. So just sit tight when it comes to going through the rest of these starter zones. It's going to take a while.
Anaria Shola.
Ah, Papaneeks, thank you for sharing your experience at the Shrine of Dathramar. First off, you should be commended for your sense of duty and respect. It will serve you well, not only here, but in all of Azeroth as well. As for the odd sensation, it is no doubt a contributing part of the taint that has befallen Sunstrider Isle. We shall keep an eye on it. Thank you for alerting us to it. Ah, well done. I knew you'd be perfect for the task. Once it's safe to make use of our outdoor facilities on the Isle, I'll be putting these things to good use. Like I mentioned, please feel free to keep the satchel. Also, you may find this piece of armor to be useful. Consider it ample compensation for a simple task performed dutifully.
Remember the Sunwell.
I find it funny because he actually doesn't give us a piece of armor, but whatever. Alright, so we're going to be going to deal with Falengin when we return. Stay tuned.